Today's experience will leave many disappointed because of what was revealed here. A lady shared an experience her daughter had. Kindly stay to the end to understand her experience. Hi, brother. I will love to keep my identity hidden for now, please, for the safety of myself and my daughter. 'Cause I believe this will not go well with some people and they may track me and my daughter down. I am sending this because of the recent video I saw on your channel concerning the Los Angeles wildfire. Some days ago, God took my 12-year daughter on a journey while in the hospital. He revealed to her those who are the reason for the wildfire outbreak. I pray you publish this anytime soon so the world will know the dark secret behind the loss of properties and lives in Los Angeles. From the moment my daughter was born, her health has been unstable. Every school term, she would fall ill, and as she grew older, her condition worsened. Despite multiple doctor visits, tests, and treatments, there were no concrete solution. We, her parents, were left to rely on our faith and do everything within our power to give her the love and care she deserved. On December 16, 2024, we hit a breaking point. Her body could no longer hold up, and we rushed her to the hospital. I remember watching her struggle to breathe as I held her hand, tears coming down my face. We admitted her, unsure if she would make it to the next day. To be sincere, brother, those days were filled with sleepless nights and silent prayers. I stayed by her side every moment, refusing to leave her alone. The doctors didn't give us much hope, but deep inside, I held tiredly to the belief that God's plan for her was not over. Every morning, I had a small devotion in her room. We read from the Bible, prayed together, and I spoke words of encouragement to her, always letting her that healing will come at God's time. It was all I could offer, faith and hope. As I put this down to you, we are still on admission in the hospital. On January 2nd, after one such devotion, my daughter looked at me. I remember she telling me this, "Mom, something happened last night. I need to tell you." Beloved, what she shared next left me shaken. She told me she saw two men enter her hospital room that night while everyone was asleep. One of them, she said, was dressed in white and glowing so brightly that she couldn't see his face. The other had a kind face with a white beard. They spoke to her gently, asking her to follow them. At first, I struggled to believe what I was hearing, but the way she described it, it was as though she had truly lived it. She said she got out of bed, something she hadn't been able to do for months. She told me, "Mom, I just stood up, like I wasn't sick at all." What struck me most was what she said next. She claimed that when she looked back, she saw her own body still lying on the bed, just as I had left her. And there I was too, sitting in the chair beside her, dozing off after another long night by her side. She told me it was as if her spirit had left her body, but she didn't feel scared. She said the man in white came closer and gently picked her up in his arms. "Mom," she said, "I've never felt anything like that before. It was like I was surrounded by love. So much love, I thought my heart would burst." As she spoke, I could see the memory playing out in her mind. She told me the two men didn't speak much, but the moment the man in white lifted her, they disappeared from the hospital room. She described how they reappeared in a city. She said everywhere were busy with people walking and working, but no one seemed to notice her or the men. She told me how he carried her the whole time, and she didn't feel tired or weak. She felt peaceful, like nothing was wrong anymore. Then they entered a large hall. She said it was filled with people, and immediately she recognized some of their faces. They were heroes from Nollywood children's movies, the actors and actresses she had admired and watched growing up. She mentioned some names, but please permit me to keep their name withheld for now, sir. But what she saw next shocked her. She said those same people were mocking the man in white. They hurled insults, laughed, and spoke with disdain. She heard them say things like, "Who needs saving? Leave us alone." She told me they didn't care about him. They laughed at him, like he didn't matter. She described how the man in white stood there in silence. He didn't respond to their mocking or their insults, but she could see his sorrow. She said it was as if their words hurt. She told me she don't understand why they treated him that way, that he didn't do anything to deserve it. She told me that after the mocking and insults in the hall, the man in white finally spoke, but not to the people. He turned to his companion. That it is sad. He came to save them from the destruction that is about to consume their city, but they refused to see it. As they stepped out of the city, the place changed. She said fire began to erupt in different places, spreading rapidly. Buildings falling, and smoke were everywhere in the air. She heard and saw people screamed and ran in every direction, desperately searching for help. But it was too late. The flames consumed everything. She said the other man, the one with the white beard, began speaking loudly as though addressing the people directly. He urged them to cry out to his master, the one who had come to save them. He kept on saying, "Cry out to him. He can still help you." She told me how they didn't even try. They just kept running and screaming like they couldn't hear him at all. She described how the man in white walked steadily, his face filled with tears, as though each cry from the people broke him further. She told me the men took her to a building she described as the White House. 'Cause through movies and watching the television she know the structure of the White House. I know that even before the encounter that she knows of the White House and how it looks. Inside, they entered a room where a man with a white beard sat in an executive chair. He looked powerful and commanding, as though he was in charge of many things. The man in white stepped forward and began to speak with the man seated in the executive, that if he will humble himself and accept his lordship, he told the man in the chair, he can save his people from what is coming. The man in the chair didn't agree. He let him know that they will not bow to his lordship. She told me that the man in white stood there for a moment, as though hoping for a change of heart. But when it didn't come, his sorrow became visible. She described how he turned and walked away, his grief evident with every step. The man with the white beard followed him silently, and together, they left the White House. She told me how the men brought her daughter back to the hospital. Before they left, the man in white looked at her, and though he said nothing, she felt he wanted her to share what she had seen. When she told me this, I didn't know what to make of it. This is the meaning God laid in my heart concerning what He showed my daughter. When the wildfire in Los Angeles began, my daughter's visions started to make sense. She had told me about fire consuming a city, people crying out in desperation, and a sorrowful man in white walking away. Now, watching the news and seeing the devastation, I realized it was unfolding just as she had seen. The memories of her vision became even clearer when I later heard about the Golden Globes event. A comedian had stood before a crowd and openly mocked God, and the room erupted in laughter. My heart sank. That was the very scene my daughter had described, the gathering of well-known figures mocking the man in white, as though they didn't care about the warning he carried. She had mentioned recognizing faces in the hall, faces she remembered from Nollywood movies she loved as a child. At the time, it seemed impossible to make sense of it, but now, everything was coming together. I couldn't help but connect the dots. The mocking, the rejection, and the warning of destruction, it was all happening before my eyes. The wildfire wasn't just a random event, it was part of something much deeper, something my daughter had been shown before anyone could have known. Even the leadership of this nation is not without fault. My daughter spoke of the man in the White House, refusing to bow, refusing to humble himself before the one who came to save. And now, I see how far we've drifted from God's ways. I'm not a political person, but I can't ignore what's happening. The current administration seems to have turned its back on God, embracing policies that defy His principles. Decisions that do not honor Him cannot stand without consequences. This wildfire, this destruction, it is a wake-up call. It is a reminder that God will not be mocked. When nations and leaders choose to reject Him, when they harbor pride and rebellion, judgment is inevitable. Believers, I urge you to pray. Pray for Los Angeles and its people. Pray for our leaders, that they may turn to God before it's too late. Let us intercede for our world and heed the warnings we've been given. Let us not be like those who mocked the man in white, blind to the destruction looming over them. May God's mercy prevail, even in the midst of judgment. Believers, I urge you from the depths of my heart, pray. Pray for Los Angeles and for the people caught in this wildfire, both literally and spiritually. Pray for those who have lost their way, who mock God without realizing the danger they are in. Pray that their hearts may be softened and their eyes opened before it is too late. Let us also pray for our leaders, for those in positions of power and influence. My daughter's vision showed the rejection of the man in white, even at the highest levels of authority. This is not a time for pride or stubbornness. It is a time for repentance and humility. Pray that they will turn to God, acknowledge His lordship, and lead with wisdom that honors Him. We cannot afford to ignore the warnings we have been given. Let us not be like those who mocked the man in white, laughing and blind to the destruction that loomed over them. Instead, may we be vigilant, seeking God's face and interceding for our world. I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe in God's mercy. Even in the midst of judgment, His mercy can prevail. But it begins with us, those who believe. Let us take up the call, stand in the gap, and pray fervently. There is still time for healing, for restoration, and for redemption, if only we humble ourselves and seek Him. Thank you for staying to the end of this experience. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to this channel as we keep sharing experiences sent to us. Thank you.